G'day and welcome to MelMag Live. I'm Emily Kulich, and today we are talking. Today is the first hopefully working MelMag stream of 2021. If anyone tuned in the other day for our first attempt at this stream, they would have noticed that you couldn't hear my voice, and hopefully you're now able to hear my voice. Because I'm paranoid and have no sense of professionalism, yep, I can test it now and we can hear ourselves. This is good. Today we're joined by Graham magazine editor and Monash University journalism lecturer Matt Mitchell. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Emily. How are you?
I'm good. Now, again, we seem to have figured out most of the issues from the other day. The one that we haven't figured out is Matt being out of sync. I think it's an issue on my end, so no idea. Matt's changed everything about his setup, so it's definitely not him. But yes, enough talking about the issues with the stream. We're here to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on street press. And also because we've had this delay, we can talk about the impact and just the flow-on effects of Facebook's decision to block news in Australia. Ironically enough, MelMag is a vaguely news publication in Australia, and we're streaming on Facebook today, and we do encourage you to leave comments on the platform. If you have any questions for Matt throughout this, feel free to leave them, and I'll ask them to him during the stream. But yeah, Matt, how are you doing? If you tell us a bit about yourself and Graham magazine.
Sure. So I've been a journalist now. I actually started when I had hair, so I've been a journalist now for well over half of my life. And I took over. Graham magazine has been around. It's a street press magazine, mostly centered in Melbourne, and definitely when I took it over about 3 years ago, but Graham has been around since 2009. So going into our 12th year this year, the last, and again, so focused on very much food and drink and the hospitality industry in Melbourne. When I took it over, it was very much, reviews, events, this is what's happening, etc., and was stocked for free in cafes and restaurants across Melbourne. And I think in total there were about 3,000 venues in which Graham was stocked. It had about 25,000 copies used to be published with every issue, and it had an average, I think, audience readership in the last data that we checked, but about 100,000 people in total. Then along came COVID. So street press, obviously, we saw the first of the lockdowns happened in March, and that had an impact immediately. And we saw that right across the entire media landscape here in Australia. We saw well-established newspapers, well-established magazines that have been in operation for ages, Men's Health, Elle, etc., all gone. And the same thing, and Graham wasn't immune from that either. Despite being incredibly tiny, we had to evolve. So for us, the lasting impact for us has been in the fact that we were a free magazine that you could pick up, at a cafe restaurant, like I said before. But the lasting legacy for us has been, again, Melbourne had successive lockdowns. We couldn't get our product. We could get it printed, but we couldn't get it stocked. So nobody was open to actually stock our magazine. Equally, we're now facing another dilemma, which is cafes and restaurants probably don't want our product to come back because people don't want to touch it. So although there's that tactility, which a lot of people really love, including myself, about having a physical product like a newspaper or a magazine, unfortunately for us, one that's likely to be leafed through by a number of hands in a COVID world is unlikely to be very popular. And so I think we would face a lot of issues actually even being stocked by cafes and restaurants.
And I guess I'm not sure how, being free press, you do find at least some of your support through advertising and so on from venues, and I can't imagine they have too much to spend on that front at the moment either.
Absolutely not. So that was another thing that we had to do as well. So evolution was something that we had to do really quickly. I loathe the oft-used term pivot. I can't stand it. So I will say, evolve or pirouette. So we had to do a little pirouette very quickly to try and change the business. So knowing that, I had a print budget there to actually push out what was going to be the first edition for some time, and in 2020, I just quickly changed it. And instead, redirected. So we just went purely digital. So the magazine now is digital. We come out quarterly instead of monthly, and that was bi-monthly. So we have a website which is currently being redeveloped. We're about to go. We have a digital magazine that you can read to all intents and purposes exactly like a magazine, except you don't have to touch anything apart from your phone or your computer. That's done really well. And we re-diverted the budget that was actually allocated to that. We diverted to actually supporting freelance writers and recipe writers, particularly, again, it was a paltry budget, but it was something that we could do. And especially to help mostly international students and also refugees, people on visas which didn't enable them to work and get government support. So everyone, as we all know, in that first lockdown in March, it was savage, and people were really, really affected by what happened there. No, and to me, and again as a lecturer, what really bothered me was how international students were very much left in the lurch. And so what I could do, I tried to help in diverting the budget towards giving some money to freelancers and giving some money for writing articles and recipes, etc. So to your question, which is a very long-winded way of actually getting to, which was about, so actually finding advertising is really difficult. So that is something that, again, I changed the model of that as well, which it is purely a not-for-profit magazine now. I lose money to actually publish it, and I'm quite happy to do that. But so our rates are tiny compared to everybody else, and the reason is that any advertising that we actually get is redirected towards the writers and to the designer. So there's actually like I said, I make nothing. I lose money to actually publish it, but it's my baby, so of course.
I'll have to remember to ask you to plug your contact deeds at the end of this, so that anyone who does want to support you and supporting them can get. Actually, let's do that now before I forget, Matt. If anyone does want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? Is it just via the contact page on the website?
So it's matt@grammagazine.com.au is my email address, Matt with 2 T's. But anything via the website, so grammagazine.com.au, GRAM, and then magazine. And Instagram is also really good as well, which is @gram_magazine. So you can get us there. We're on Twitter. We're on all the platforms. TikTok eventually.
Very cool. No.
Actually, but I think TikTok will be an amazing thing for us. So
that's what I look
forward to. I think TikTok actually offers a lot of potential for us as well, and we're also looking at Clubhouse. So we're looking at sort of new platforms where we can engage in the issues, and there are actually a lot of issues in regards to the hospitality issue and food and drink, the food industry, food security, etc. So the magazine has evolved as well from just sort of here is a restaurant opening kind of lameness to like, let's check out this amazing brioche over here. We want to move the magazine away from that into something that's actually more focused on the issues at play. So one investigation that we've got coming up, investigations, we're actually looking at visas and how visas are being exploited by some employers to actually bring in people coming in from overseas. They work for a particular restaurant, for example, and to all intents and purposes, their tenure is, in some cases that we've seen, kind of akin to slavery. So that's a long burn for us that we'll be working on as well. So it's a point of difference for us with our competitors, and it's an area where we don't see a lot of reporting. The Age and Fairfax did a great investigation about 2 years ago into underpayment in the industry. So some great stuff done by Ben Schneiders, who was the journalist that led that. Into some of the big names like Neil Perry, etc., not paying their staff correctly, so underpayment. George Columbaris, we saw all of that happening. So those issues still exist, but the attention is just not on them. So that's something that under sort of my stewardship, I would like to actually see more of. So we'll be doing more investigations and more reporting on issues as well.
So you've got more in-depth investigations, more hard work, and less money to get it done in.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
My plate is full. Yeah, you mentioned before, it stood out to me that you're having some success with your digital edition. I believe, is that the one that's distributed through issue in the same way, like it looks like the old school magazine and people flick through it? You've had
It
success with that?
absolutely is. Yes, it is. And so the print and production, so the production and distribution costs, and they're the things I don't think a lot of people realize that really occupy a lot of the balance sheet, I guess, for every issue that comes out. It's significant to actually, publish 25,000 issues. It was coming out of Traralgon, so we actually came out of the Latrobe Valley Express sort of printing press out of there. And then distribution, getting it into 3,000 outlets, it's significant expense that comes into it. In a dwindling, near non-existent advertising market, we just absolutely could not bear that cost. But to do it digitally, we can actually produce it at about 8% of what it would have cost. So had we done a print edition, the readership is down, obviously, but we have more insights into how many reads, etc., that we can get from issue as well. So we still actually have a really good audience of dedicated readers, but it's just a new platform and a new way that they're actually engaging with the product. So I think for us,
Do,
sadly, for the foreseeable future, the print edition is toast. It's over.
do you feel that finding audience, obviously Graham's developed his audience over the last, 11 years now with a print presence? It's in people's faces, it's right there where they can grab it. And it's kind of hard to ignore something physically in your world. Do you feel that there's a risk for growth online? Obviously, you guys are a bit more established. Do you have that space? But also for potentially new titles, do you think there'd be an issue with any new titles trying to establish themselves, trying to push into an online space where people don't necessarily notice the masthead? I'm not sure they notice it in street press either. But
Yeah.
like where the brand recognition just blanket probably isn't there for people who haven't been a long time consumer of your content.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's a very crowded space that we're actually in. So, Graham's competitors, we're up against Broadsheet, who are incredibly successful, who also, I think in 2018 or 2019, revisited and republished, their print edition again. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I would suspect that they will have the same issues that we do. So actually going into physical press, they will face exactly the same issue. Where to be stocked? Will people stock it? Will people actually engage and touch the physical product? But yeah, it's a very crowded space. And that is, I would not want to start a new magazine, or you're up against bloggers, etc., as well, and influencers. And it's all of those sort of voices are out there. So it's really hard to work out where to cut through and what the next thing is going to be that will work for your product and to still get through. For us, it's definitely about subscribing. So we have a number of dedicated readers that actually subscribe to our print edition and subscribe to Graham, and those guys are invaluable. And that is where we would primarily be getting most of our traffic from at the moment. When we look at the other channels, the growth for us will definitely come. I don't want to go into too much detail, obviously, but we're looking at some new platforms where I believe they could actually really be of benefit to us as well. Instagram, some would argue Instagram is a great generator of traffic to like a food and drink sort of website. I'd
No.
argue I'd argue from a media point of view that actually the engagement on Instagram is relatively low. Facebook, on the other hand, was something that used to drive traffic. Segue.
Actually, on that point, has your publication been affected by the Facebook media ban?
No. So mercifully, I think we were too small and overlooked. So Graham can still publish on Facebook and share on Facebook as well. I suppose, unfortunately for our competitors, they cannot. And I think what Facebook has done is borderline criminal, and it is not an ethical way to do business.
It's a startling way to do business, and I will just move on. Say let's Just to recap for anyone who is joining us, we have been talking to Matt Mitchell, editor of Gram Magazine, about the effects of COVID on street press. I'm not sure in the kind of bungled way I started this stream if I actually mentioned exactly what we were talking about, but thankfully Matt has the nous to have made that pretty obvious in his first answer. Matt is, of course, also a lecturer at Monash University, and in that role and has had years of media experience in print, on TV, on web, and training people, loads of industry contacts. What have you seen has been the response within the media and within the journalism education system to what Facebook has done? And to people who might be watching this in the archive, what we're talking about is Facebook having blocked links to news websites in Australia in protest to the federal government legislation which would require them to pay to link to news sites. Matt, what have you seen as or heard in response to that among people around you?
I would argue that the journalists that I've spoken to, and in various fields, so I'm talking television, print, magazines, and I've spoken to a few, everybody was very much taken by surprise with what happened. There were some that had planned for some sort of contingency planning when sort of Google in particular was threatening that they would pull out, etc. So there was some planning, but it really did come as a total surprise. So I remember waking up in the morning yesterday at the ungodly hour of about seven or six. It's not ungodly, actually. It was pretty late, and seeing what had happened. And I thought, whoa! And of course, first thing I did was check, Graham's sort of Facebook page, and mercifully, like I said, it was okay. Then checked my competitors. Unfortunately for them, they're not okay. They've been completely affected. And I checked even big players, Nine, The Age, the Herald Sun, etc. And to see the Bureau of Meteorology, to see NITV, for example, just to pick on, let's say NITV, a voice, for First Nations people in Australia, an invaluable asset for them and a voice for them as well. To see that just extinguished overnight on a whim, and against something so petty as money, etc. as well, is just horrific. To think that you could do that to impact the already marginalized and marginalize them further, I think is unconscionable.
And another issue that comes out of this is the spread of misinformation, the spread of, or potentially of quote unquote, I hate using the term, but it's what everyone uses, fake news on the platform. Is this just leaving us open at the moment to COVID vaccine conspiracy theories and all kinds of misinformation surrounding any part of the federal government's COVID response?
Yes, I think so. And I think that's a fear that definitely those in the journalism sort of academia sort of field absolutely feel that way as well. And I think a lot of researchers and media outlets as well. It's not just about the fact that the ability to share our content has been taken away. It's also about the fact that all of these voices have just been squashed as well. So it now opens, as you said, this playing field for misinformation to now just become rife. And I think that is something that we're going to have to look at. I actually live in the very vain hope that this is not a bad thing. And maybe that's just me being an eternal optimist, but I actually hope that Australians go back. I would love to see that or that the traffic to news websites didn't go down at all, that Australians went straight to the source, and that we also, and that it stayed that way, and that actually this was the beginning of something pretty wonderful around the world, where we all started to not rely on Facebook to share content, etc., where we actually went to websites and looked at things. This is one of the things I love about magazines, newspapers, and even websites as well. When you have a post that's sort of delivered to you and spoon-fed, I guess, here is something that you might be interested in, or here is something that your peer has delivered to you, you miss that adjacent information. So when you go to a newspaper and you're reading this article, but you might be exposed to another topic, another issue, another writer, another story, and you suddenly go into that as well. it's a really wonderful thing that happens when you go and visit an actual website and not just rely on a post to come through. So I think when you actually do your own searching, so I would love to see that happen as well. I use this analogy with my own child, for example, who argues that I am reading, and I'm like, yeah, but you just read Japanese manga, and I'm like, no, but if you look at something else, don't just read Japanese manga. Sure, you're reading, but and I'm not saying what you're reading is is garbage. All for it. What I'm saying is open your mind and read other things as well. So read some Macbeth, read some Shakespeare, let's say, which he has to because of school.
For those of us, I'm not in that group, but for the majority, which is, I guess, just a casual consumer of news, it's there because it's convenient, or it's there because it's on before or after the show they watch on TV, or it's just in their feed as they're scrolling while half watching home reno shows on whichever channel that is. Do you think they've necessarily noticed that this is gone? Because if they're not active consumers of news, they might not have noticed this news itself. And secondly, do you think that many people, because they're just casual consumers, do you think they're actually going to care much?
That is a very, very good question. I think the media has been rightly hysterical about what's happened. Do I think that? I don't think the general public care. I really don't. I think most consumers are casual, and I think the research indicates that it's about 70% of the Australian market is a casual consumer of news. So, are those? I think that they would have actually looked at what happened yesterday and went, what do you mean? What's going on? I don't think they understand. I don't think they want to understand, and I think they care even less. So it just means that it won't appear in their feed anymore, and that Facebook will just be the social network it's set out to be in the first place for them. So I don't think they're going to be upset.
Do you think news publishers will change the way they use the platform in response to this? And because nothing changed. This is a bit of a different angle, but nothing changed when the publishers had to suddenly start moderating comments on Facebook or face legal consequences. That was I think a High Court decision that came out that caused that to become law. I don't know if there's been any test cases of that yet. I must admit I haven't kept up. But do you think news publishers, if Facebook capitulates, do you think news publishers will just go back to normal and treat Facebook as they always have, or do you think they'll start trying to push subscriptions differently, or some other means of continuing to reach their consumer base?
I think that they will. I think what we'll see is definitely more of a push towards subscriptions. They will 100% do that. I think we'll also see a move into other platforms, which they've already started to do. The Guardian, for example, does TikTok really well. They have a dedicated reporter. I don't know if the reporter does anything else, but and does TikTok to the style. So if you check out the Guardian on TikTok, they've got about 30,000 followers. They create good content. They are telling news in a totally different way on a new platform. And I think that's really commendable. And I think we'll see more of that as well. What they need to do is to realize, I think media outlets need to get much more savvy in how they deal with social media. And not just for the potential of what happens and what we see with Facebook, for example, but they need to create content specific for those platforms. So when we look at television, for example, 9 and 7 had Facebook Watch. So they had Facebook, they would create dedicated bulletins for those for that Facebook channel. Obviously that's over for the foreseeable future. I don't know what that means in terms of somebody's job, but I guess that there was an impact there. But definitely when we come
is it over? Because if they're just posting video content, they're still able to do that to their page, aren't they? Or are they blocked from posting to their page at all?
I think they're blocked from everything. So I don't think they can.
Oh, okay. I missed that part because.
Well, if you have a look, if you look at their pages, they're blank. There's nothing on there.
Yeah. Okay. I missed that because I did some tests on one of the. I manage a page which has been blocked, and but we don't post that much to it. So yeah. We haven't posted that much this week. So I hadn't actually noticed yet that it was more than just the link block. That's
well, definitely the last
search a bit better there, Matt.
The last time I looked, there was nothing on there at all, and I can quickly just jump on just to confirm that.
Yeah.
Well. Yeah. So the last time I looked, there was absolutely. Sorry, 2 seconds. I'm one of those people that has 3 computers. So
Oh, good.
kind of, yeah, that's not boasting. That's nothing to be proud of.
I've got two computers on my phone in front of me to run this, and between them three screens.
Okay, so I'll go to the Age on Facebook,
Um,
and so you just click on the Age, and no posts yet is what comes up. So
Amazing.
there is nothing there. So
Amazing. I'll tell you what's funny
actually,
that also isn't there. When I went to the Facebook Australia about page for the what they're doing, if you click on the privacy information thing before you accept cookies, you get a 404, which seems really appropriate for Facebook.
doesn't it? But interestingly, Facebook's own page yesterday was exactly the same. So that even blocked their own
Yeah,
page, which was, let me just check it. I'm sure they've fixed that by now. You would hope. Um,
yeah.
yeah, no, that's fixed, of course. Um, yeah, but yeah,
So looking forward, do you think there's going to be, I guess, a re-emphasis on? Actually, okay. Here's another question that comes from someone I was talking to prior to streaming, and they made the point. Like I made the comment, kind of jokingly, that Facebook blocked news in the country, like as in like Facebook cut news off from Australia, and they replied with, "Really? There's other platforms. There's still the websites. Is this
I,
such? I mean, it is a big deal, obviously. Longer term, though, is it a big deal if Facebook sticks to their guns and decides, okay, we're going to just not have this functionality in Australia? We're going to kick these accounts off. It's within our rights."
I would like to see, like as I said before, I would like to see actually Facebook stay out. I would like to see them stay out. I would like to see people actually go direct to website. I'd like to see them buy newspapers and magazines. I'd like to see them actually paying for content, which I think Facebook should have been doing. They should absolutely be paying for the content that they were using. And so 100%, I think that we need to look at what will happen next. I think we can live without Facebook. I seriously think we can. And I think it's only a matter of time, and Australians will just keep using Facebook. They just won't see their news on it anymore. It'll be more of a social kind of network, etc. And I think media outlets will just move on with their lives.
The media, obviously, like declining print sales is partially convenience, but do you feel but what does the media need to do to, I guess, re-engage trust and, I guess, a desire for its consumption among readers? We've had like Instagram. You'll get news posted straight to Instagram. There's a few, especially youth-oriented news publications, which will just post screenshots of stories to their like they have like very very super summarized three to six panel news
Yep.
summaries. Um, Sorry.
Do
What? So people do get to still casually consume the news. What does the media need to do to, I guess, pull back that audience, which it has lost, partially due to trust and partially due to convenience?
oh,
Big question.
that's a very big question. What do they need to do? Look, without doubt, I mean, you did hit on something, which is the deficit of trust that the media has, and I think that is something that has been ongoing and sadly becoming worse and worse. It is something that they need to rebuild. The media does need to establish that trust and that connection with the community again, particularly around. Um, it's such a big question. I don't know how they would do it, to be honest. I really don't know how. I would argue the best way to start would be to do more reporting on issues that matter to people, to invest more in the journalism that will help make a difference to society, and less of the journalism that will be focused on what happened on Married at First Sight, for example. I would like to see less maths and more maths actually in my journalism, if that makes sense.
But
I
isn't
think
the
that
reason that content's out there so much that that's what people were consuming? And it's always been a part of media, like the gossip pages and the complete garbage has always been in the media in print historically.
True, but it used to be confined more to actually a gossip section. So if you take the Herald Sun print edition, for example, it was largely in the confidential kind of area. What we're seeing now is, I wouldn't even say like a bleed into other areas, and I'm not just pointing at the Herald Sun here. It's every media outlet. It's everywhere. I would say that it's hemorrhaging this celebrity-driven, banal content. I would say it's actually worse than it ever has been because there is so much of it, and they're chasing. You're quite right. People are interested and want to watch that content. They want to read those stories. However, there comes a time when you are a media outlet when you need to take a stand and go, do you know what, we're going to start pulling back a little bit here. And it's tragic when you see, excellent journalists, for example, Richard Baker and Nick McKenzie at The Age, who do fantastic investigations and that take months to actually complete. And they publish the story, it goes online, it goes in the print edition, etc. But the amount of eyeballs that will read that story will be less than what happened than a Married at First Sight recap. Is just a tragedy, and it's terrible for journalism. So unfortunately, it's one of those things I think we have to live with, but I think media outlets can make a stand to rebuild that trust. They need to do more reporting on issues that actually matter and will hopefully help change society.
Thank you so much, Matt. We could talk about this and street press and all kinds of media for hours. I'm just conscious of the fact it's been half an hour and taking a lot of your time on a very busy day. Where can people keep up with you and Gram Magazine?
So probably subscribe via the website, Gram Magazine, GRAM magazine.com.au would be a perfect way to do that. You can jump on there. It comes up with an annoying pop-up at the very start, but only once you subscribe, and you'll get the editions as they sort of come through from there. That would be the best way. Or you could actually like us on Facebook, because we're still on Facebook. So you can actually like us on Facebook. We can post content there as well for now.
Very good, very good. And anyone who's wanting to keep up with MelMag, you can find us at melmag.com.au. For now, you can find us on Facebook, and the archive of this will also be uploaded to YouTube, run by Google, another platform that's been messing around with access to content for Australian providers already as part of its response to this. It's hard to avoid these platforms, isn't it, Matt?
It is.
So just search MelMag. It's at MelMag Vic on Victoria on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks so much for your time, Matt. Have a good one.
My pleasure. Thanks, Emily.